SwayamPrabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Hello everyone, welcome to the fifth and final lecture of week 6 on modernization and creative communication. Over the last couple of lectures, we have explored Peter's fascinating book, Speaking into the Air, A History of the Idea of Communication. I'm sure by now you have realized that this is not a typical communication theory book. It's a profound journey through history, philosophy, and the very essence of what it means to communicate. And in this final lecture, we will take a step back and look at the relevance of this book. Not just as a historical analysis, but we will take it as something that still speaks to our present and the future as well. This session will serve as a kind of review, trying together the core themes, arguments, and key takeaways we have discussed so far. So why is this important? Because Peters doesn't just teach us about the past of communication. He challenges us to rethink about our assumptions about the present and the approach communication about the communication, that communication is more nuanced, more ethical, and even creative, right? So let's reflect on how Peter's work fits into the larger conversation about communication studies and why it matters to us today. To understand the significance of this book, let me set the stage for you. Peters published Speaking into the Air in the year 1999, and it remains an incredibly influential work in the field of communication studies. The subtitle, A History of the Idea of Communication, gives us a clue about what Peters is trying to do. He is asking us to think deeply about a simple yet profound question: what does it really mean to communicate? Communication, Peters suggests, is not as straightforward as it seems. The phrase speaking into the air, as the title goes, perfectly captures this idea. Think about it. When you speak, there's no guarantee someone will hear you, let alone understand you. This is true not just in personal conversations, but also in broader communication context like the media, the internet, or even historical speeches. Now, there are a few key reasons. First, let us concentrate on this point: bridges traditions. How? Peter connects the American empirical approach to communication with European philosophical thought. Secondly, it has a very unique perspective. Instead of focusing on technical details, Peters explores historical, philosophical, and even spiritual dimensions of communication. And third, it gives a very broad scope. How? The book takes us on a journey from the time of Plato to St. Paul to today's digital technologies. It is a historical and intellectual adventure. And then a critique of reductionism. How? Finally, Peter challenges us to move beyond the narrow oval and overlay simplified views of communication that dominate modern research. Think of this book as a guide to understand how ideas about communication have evolved over centuries and why those ideas matter even today. Now that we know the background of the book, let us talk about the key themes and arguments Peters make. First, the dual nature of communication. Peter introduces this idea that communication has two faces, what he calls a bridge and a chasm. On one hand, communication acts as a bridge. It connects people across time, space, and difference. Think of letters, phone calls, or broadcasts. They allow us to reach others who are far away from us, right? On the other hand, communication reveals a chasm. There's always a risk of misunderstanding or failure to truly connect. Think about a text message you misinterpreted or a speech that fell out of touch with its audience. Okay, so this duality, communication as both a connection and a failure, is a recurring theme in Peter's works. Now, here Peters brings in two fascinating models of communication. One is the dialogue model, from, of course, inspired from Socratic model of communication, like face to face or direct interaction. Another one is dissemination. Okay, so here in dialogue model, this is the idea of face to face direct interaction, like two people talking and exchanging ideas. It's very immediate and personal. But when we talk about dissemination model, this is more about broadcasting to an unseen, unknown audience. Think of someone giving a speech in a large hall or sending a message into space, right? So now Peters argues that both models have their strengths and limitations. For example, while dialogue allows for personal connections, dissemination can reach far more people. So, but in both the cases, perfect understanding is often unattainable. Here's one of the book's central arguments. Peters challenges the notion that communication should always lead to perfect understanding. This is what he challenges. We often assume that if we communicate well, the other person is going to understand us perfectly. But is that realistic? Peter argues the difference, even miscommunication can actually be productive. It can spark creativity, cooperation, and new ideas. Think of a time when a misunderstanding forced you to think differently or find new solution. This is a radical way of looking at communication, but it's also liberating because it frees us from the pressure to get it right every single time. Next, Peters grounds his arguments in the work of some of the great thinkers in history, as we have already discussed. He explores communication as a philosophical problem through the ideas of figures like Plato, Augustine, Kierkegaard, Hegel, and Locke. Let's highlight a few key points here. Augustine's doctrine of science. Let us take that into consideration. Augustine viewed communication as something deeply spiritual and tied to science. He even explored how angels communicate, direct and unmediated connection. Now, Locke's individualism, where it stands, Locke shifted the focus of communication to the individual mind. For him, communication was about conveying mental ideas as clearly as possible. And when we talk about Kierkegaard's paradox and irony, Kierkegaard emphasized the tensions and contradictions in communication. He believed that these paradoxes force us to think and engage more deeply. So what's fascinating is that Peters use these ideas to show how communication has always been more than just a practical tool. It's an ethical and philosophical process. For instance, when we communicate, we take a certain obligation, to listen, to respect differences, and to interpret others' perspectives fairly, right? So now let's take a journey through the history of communication as Peters described it. First, Peters explores how communication evolved from oral traditions to writing, printing, and eventually electronic media. Each new technology, whether it's the telegraph, phonograph, or radio, has transformed how we connect and we communicate. And one of the most interesting part of the book is how Peters connects technology with mystical aspirations. For example, in the 19th century, people believed technologies like the telegraph could enable telepathy or communication with the dead. Now, let us think about media as ghost machines. Devices like phonograph and cinema are described as ghost machines because they blurred the lines between the living and the dead. Think of hearing someone's recorded voice years after they have passed away. So that's the phantasm Peters is actually talking about. So Peter also discusses the role of different technological paradigms in shaping our ideas about communication. Say, for example, the telegraph. Peter sees telegraph as a metaphor for spiritual connections. It collapses distance but doesn't guarantee understanding. Then you take radio. Radio brings immediacy and emotion. It's a medium of love, hatred, and passion even, right? Then we take film and phonography. These technologies simulate presence and bind time. A movie can make us feel like someone from the past is right here with us. Each new technology, Peters argues, produces a phantasm, an illusion of presence that challenges traditional notion of absence and distance. So how was Peters' works received? He has been compared to thinkers like Marshall McLuhan for his philosophical depth. Critics praise the book's erudition and aesthetic style. It's beautifully written and deeply thought-provoking. However, some point out that Peters focuses heavily on Western traditions, leaving out non-Western and semiotic perspectives. Despite these criticisms or critiques, the book makes a significant contribution by recentering history, religion, and philosophy in communication studies. One of the most powerful part of the book is in its discussion of the ethical dimensions of communication. Peters advocates for a kind of radical democracy, a form of communication that includes all beings, human, non-human, the animals, even the dead. He challenges us to respect otherness. Instead of eliminating differences, we should celebrate them. This is a bold critique of the status quo in academic communication studies, which often focuses on narrow empirical metrics. Now, so to summarize the entire thing, Peters gives us three powerful insights for communication studies. First, interdisciplinary approach. We need philosophy, history, theology, and media studies to truly understand communication. Now, there is a historical depth. Understanding communication's past helps us make sense of the present and future. And then the philosophical critique. Communication isn't just about clarity or efficiency, it's about ethics, it's about ambiguity and navigating human differences. So together, these insights challenge us to approach communication studies with a broader, more reflective perspective. So instead of seeing communication just as a technical skills, Peters shows us that it's a deeply human struggle that reflects hopes, fears, and connection to one another. So to wrap up the text, I would now reflect on few lines which are very important for you to note, and that will of course open up many other questions. Here he has pointed out, or he has mentioned in the text, communication is a trouble we are stuck with. Yes, that's true. And we misspend our hope in seeking spiritual fullness in communication. And again, true democracy includes all creatures, even the dead world would be invited. Now, just think, how do these ideas challenge conventional perspectives on communication? I would say, or I would rather ask, what does Peters mean by speaking into the air? How does this relate to modern communication? How does the book critique the ideal of perfect understanding? So he has always challenged, throughout the book, he has challenged this notion of perfect understanding. So we must discuss that what are the ways this perfect understanding has been challenged by Peters. And finally, what lessons can contemporary communication theorists learn from historical perspectives? Because we cannot remove history and move to the future. So we have to think about this question. I think the big takeaway here is that communication is complex and often imperfect, but that's completely fine. Miscommunication is inevitable, but can lead to growth, creativity, and new connection. Peters encourages us to think about communication as historical, ethical, and philosophical, and to appreciate the beauty of our shared human struggles to connect. Therefore, this book isn't just about understanding communication. It's about understanding ourselves as humans striving to connect despite all the challenges and complexities we face. So thank you for being such engaged learners, and I hope this session and this particular book has given you some sense of how Peters' works connects everything we have studied and why it remains so relevant even today. Thank you.